can be done. And it is only with you, we are looking at an Africa whose development is people-driven. And so when you are there, we know that you are behind this agenda and you want this agenda to move quite ahead. I would like to inform you this afternoon that my speaker will be Esther Anaibe from Nigeria. Esther will be introducing herself properly, and we will have an hour together to look at public service delivery, salaries, and corruption. Three topics coined in one. We'll see how the interrelations will go on. And we're equally pleading that for those who will have questions, please you make your questions straight to the point, very brief, because we have just 1 hour. And when you're too long, we do not get to get the raison d'etre of the topic, and equally we don't get our take-home message very clearly. We want to recognize the presence of everybody, and we wish that you will have a wonderful time with us on Sumpon Global TV. Esther Anaibe, if you are with me, please, you can introduce yourself to those who are in the house so that we can begin our program. I am happy you're there, always very punctual and looking really very smart. You're welcome, Ehi Esther Anaibe.
Thank you. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone from wherever you're connecting with us from on this platform. I am Ehi Esther Anaibe, today on the debate, where we are here to rub minds on how Agenda 2063 can come to be in this very Africa that we want. Okay, I am a teacher, primarily a teacher, also a humanitarian. Then I also coach people online and offline. I train them on mindset, emotional intelligence. I'm an education coach and also a public health expert. So tonight, I want us to look into the aspect of public service, salaries, and corruption. And we know that all of these connect with us practically, both as Africans and as citizens of the world. So I'd like to say welcome, everyone. Welcome to a time of interaction, a time of expressing ourselves, a time of moving this very continent forward in order for our children not to go through the hassles that we ourselves have gone through. Thank you once again and welcome.
Thank you so much, Esther, a teacher, humanitarian, coaching on mindset, public health expert. And we will equally be getting into the things you do as we are going on, if it is going to be in relation to our topic, and I hope it is actually going to be. Esther, today we are looking at public service delivery, salaries, and corruption. And the very, very first question I wish to ask you, that many people must be asking equally, is what is public service delivery? Maybe we begin from there, and then we'll get to salaries and then corruption as we go along the program. Esther.
Okay, public service. When we talk about public service, we're talking about a service intended to serve all members of a community. Public service, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, includes services provided by a government to people living within its jurisdiction, either directly through public sector agencies or by financing provision of services by private businesses or voluntary organizations. So, public services have to do with those services that the government provides to a community, to its people, either directly or indirectly. Thank you.
Esther, when you talk of directly or indirectly, what are we supposed to understand?
Okay, the direct services that could be rendered could be funded, managed, and monitored by the government itself, or it could be outsourced to other organizations wherein the government finances and also does some form of monitoring. It could also come through contracts, okay? So when it is direct, it is wholly supervised by the government, and we tend to refer to that form of direct servicing as the traditional way of offering services to the people publicly.
Thank you very much for that clarification. In your definition, shortly, you said a public service could be services intended to serve all members of a community. We will be linking this question further as we go ahead with our discussion. But then many people equally are still wondering what are some examples of public service or public service deliveries that we can have in our community. Maybe from there, they will be more situated, and then our discussion can go on very smoothly.
Okay. According to the European Economic and Social Committee, in modern developed countries, the term public services refers to services such as education, electricity, courts, emergency services, environmental protection, healthcare, military, public transportation, public buildings, social services, telecommunications, urban planning, transportation infrastructure, waste management, and water supply. So these are some basic examples of public services.
Yeah, when you list the number of public services that you have listed, I begin to imagine that some of these services, if not most of them, were supposed to be enjoyed for free by the public, but that is not usually the case. Let's just take the case of emergency, especially in our continent. We discovered that emergency is not what we see in other countries, that you just call an emergency unit and people are there to pick you up. What can you say about this type of public service, which we are expected to have and enjoy, but we do not have those type of services? If at all they exist, they are not as public as we can think.
Okay, the reason why some services that the government ought to offer to the public or offer to her people are not actually available is because of the lack of importance, the lack of control and monitoring, the lack of accountability from this particular government on the services they're supposed to provide. They don't see it as important. That is why they'd rather turn their minds to things that will give them some benefits personally instead of the public good. So the reason why emergency services are not there is because the life of the average African or the life of the citizen in the country where emergency services is not available is not taken to be anything. Because in reference to the Organization for European Cooperation and Development, these are a set of 38 member countries that have come together to say, okay, we want to drive our economy forward and bring out policies that will actually help us to drive change and transformation. With respect to those countries, with respect to those member countries, they take the life of the average citizen as very, very important. That is why emergency to them will help to save the life of one person. One person is very, very important. But right here, we are battling in the African continent with lives being destroyed, wanton destruction of lives. And as such, when the government can look past destruction of over 1,000 lives within 2 or 3 days, how do you not expect them to bother about how emergency for 1 or 2 or 3 persons? Calling emergency for someone that is fainting, for someone that seems to be losing his or her breath, or for someone that is just in an accident that needs emergent attention. No, it's not taken as priority. Why? Because there is no political will to bring to effectiveness, to bring to bear these policies, to implement the very, very policies that says that emergency should be one of those services that will be provided for the people. So this is one of the reasons why we don't have such public services delivered to the people. Yes, this is one of the reasons.
Yeah, Esther, we will be forced to, swap, because when you already talk about emergency, like you have said, in most of our countries in African continent, we discover that it is mostly for those who can pay the price. And this leads us already to the third subsection of our topic, which is corruption. And you see that it makes it very difficult. You have talked of lives not worth anything for most of these people, even who are running these services, because even when they are called, sometimes they would nonchalantly tell you that they don't have fuel for some cases, and they will not even put the life of that person as a priority to rush very fast and help them. And we will be going into many of these again, like the transportation sector, which equally you say is a public service, which is supposed to be enjoyed in good conditions. We see the type of things that happen in most of our African countries, where the roads sometimes are on paper done already, like we have many roads considered to be done already on paper, whereas the roads are just still as they were, worse even than they were when they thought that these roads could already be done. Esther, thank you very much for that explanation. And we will like equally to be looking at some of the mechanisms through which public service is delivered to the people. What are some of these mechanisms through which we can expect to find public service delivered to its citizens?
Okay. So before I go into some of the mechanisms, I'd like to define what public service delivery is. Public service delivery, according to IGI Global, is the mechanism through which public services are delivered to the public by local, municipal, or federal government. And as such, we have the traditional mechanism of public service delivery, wherein it has to do with a bureaucratic, majorly a bureaucratic setting, wherein there is one size fits all kind of way that the services can be delivered, or a particular service can be delivered. That is why we begin to have bureaucratic bottlenecks, wherein we start talking about hierarchy rather than talking about the skill set of a particular official in a particular office that is supposed to implement or enforce a particular policy that will serve the public well. So one of the mechanisms is the traditional mechanism. Then the second type of mechanism is the market-based kind of mechanism, wherein we start to talk about the government going through the outsourcing mode, talk about using contracts, outsourcing it, making sure that there is strict or proper quality control measures put in place, there is proper control and monitoring put in place, there is accountability, and everything doesn't just have to be on the table of the government, because in trying to talk about transformation in the government sector, we discover that the people that are assigned to carry out most of these assignments, most of these most of these tasks that would do good to the public, they are actually sometimes the problem, because they just want to sit there. We are saying that now we want to go into an era, or rather, we're already in the era of AI. We're already in the era of using computers to check how many employees we have in a state, how many employees we have in a country. And now you have some traditionally mechanized personnel who are supposed to drive the process of public good, telling us that we are used. In fact, we know how best to use files that would amount to 2,000, 10,000, that will never be opened. Files that are supposed to move from one table to the other and make life easier for people, but instead, those files are used to carry out corruption. But if we were to use the computer, you just need to tap one or two buttons and you see the name of the person and you know the location or whatever needs next to be done. So the traditional mechanism is there, but also we have the market base, which is what the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, those 38 member countries are trying. In fact, they have started implementing because they care about their citizens. So what we have majorly, much of what we have, the mechanisms we have in driving public service here, in delivering public service here in the continent, which has slowed us down much, is the traditional method, where we have bureaucratic bottlenecks. Okay, so those are the mechanisms that we have. Basically, we have the traditional, then we have the market-based kind of mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You giving us so many points that we are going to be looking at when we are talking about corruption. You talk of bureaucratic bottlenecks, which is actually a bone in our necks when it comes to public service activities or facilities that we can enjoy. We find out that there are some people who are not even qualified to be there, but because they are put by somebody who knows somebody, and now they begin to tell us that no, it is not our right to get the services that we are supposed to enjoy. And that becomes a very big problem. And that's why we're looking at the public service delivery, salaries, as well as corruption as our topic for today. Thank you very much, Esther. I wish to equally know from you, Esther. When I listen to you talk, I want to ask this question. It's a trickish one, just tickling to hear what you will say. Can you evaluate and say that public service delivery is very good in the African continent?
Well, according to a 2018 report by the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, public service delivery in the continent is below expectation. It's below average. It's below what can serve people within the continent for them to have a good life. So it is not, we are not there yet. We are not there yet, because before you can have good delivery, you need to have people, human beings need to be there, even if we're going to be using more of machines going forward post-COVID-19. Behind every machine, there is always a human factor that imputes the data, that imputes the information that the machine is going to work with. So if the personnel are not well trained, how are we even going to get into that era of public service, proper public service delivery? A situation whereby electricity is still a luxury. Sometimes I weep. As I speak with you, I'm using a solar system to power my building. Why? Because I have decided that I don't want to be in the dark. I have created options for myself. This is something that is supposed to be normal, supposed to be a basic amenity, basic service for me. But here I am. I can provide the solar for myself because I have decided to create that option for myself. How about other persons that cannot? So I can tell you, in this continent, Agenda 2063, we've got to be really serious. That is why we are here. So let's see how we can help implement and enforce some of these things from our end. God helping us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's why we are here, and giving up is never an option with the Sunpoint Global TV and the Sunpoint Social Services. Thank God you are with us. We are not going to give up. We're going to continue working and hoping for the best while expecting the worst, like some people used to say. Thank you very much, Esther. You made mention of COVID-19 with public services, and I was just curious to inquire if this pandemic has actually impacted on the public service in our continent. Are we having some difficulties delivering some of the services because of the pandemic, or has it facilitated public service delivery instead, since in some cases few people are visiting public services? Is it making work easier instead, or is making it more difficult?
Okay, right here in Nigeria, the COVID-19, the effect of the COVID-19 is actually easing off, although we still have precautionary measures in places, public places, hospitals and all that. But while it was still in place, while the pandemic was still in place, I'd like to talk about that. The first thing we observed here was that a lot of persons had to work from home. I'll tell you my experience. The banks were more difficult to access. So I had money in the bank, but I had to stay outside of the gates to the bank. Why? Because of COVID-19 restrictions and precautionary measures. They used to allow a certain number of persons come into the bank at the time. And to me, it actually gave the banks, who did not actually want us to take our money in the first place, so that they'll have a lot in them to do their forex trading or whatever to make more money. It gave them opportunity to actually keep us away from our money. So it actually restricted, it reduced a lot of access to basic services. Things that we needed to do, we couldn't do them. And sometimes you have to go to the bank like 7 days in a week. 7 days. That's 7 days, 5 days, 5 working days in a week, then 2 days into the other week before you could get access to the bank, because there were a certain number of persons that were being allowed daily into the banking hall. So that was just one of it. Then in terms of the education, right then during the pandemic, schools were closed. Some states opened up gradually, but some other states refused to open up. And as such, when the pandemic started to ease off, children had to start going to school both mornings and afternoons, which made some of these children to go home late. Now we had more cases of rape. We had more cases of kidnapping. We had more cases of stealing and banditry. Why? Because of the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Yes, also the prices of food went up. We had to grapple with that. We are still trying to, in fact, the dollar to naira rate right now is killing. And that has affected the prices of food. We just see prices of commodities increasing by the day. And you can imagine, sometimes, not just for myself, I wonder, there are people who sell, there's this water packaged in nylon or cellophane. We call it cellophane here. So there are people who sell that. They sell for as low as 10 naira or 20 naira. I don't know if you understand Nigerian currency.
Mm-hmm.
Now they have to sell like 2-3 bags in a day. How do you expect those people to cope? So it brought forth much more hardship.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. So instead, the pandemic caused some public services to become very difficult to access because the restriction measures had to be observed. And so those are the difficulties that are coming along equally with the pandemic. And now, if Madame Abeke was here, she would have surely loved to ask if there are, I don't know how to use to put it, those services where we get information before getting into offices. Here in Africa, we discovered that public service delivery sometimes is very difficult to get information because those who are even supposed to sit at they call it customer service or something, we do not have it. I don't know if it is the same case with where you are, because I know that without that, when the absence of that or the presence of a person who is supposed to do that job and he or she feels too big sometimes, you come and they'll tell you, I am on break, I'm not receiving now, like what happened to me this afternoon, moving around with very official documents that are not even supposed to waste 10 minutes in my hands. I had to come and sit out of an office because a lady was drinking water and she had to ask me to sit outside. So how does it obtain at your place? Do you have ready information when you get into public services, or you have to look for the information yourself?
In fact, the same thing applies right here in Nigeria, wherein you have to go to a public service delivery center, such as a university. At the time I was to get my master's certificate from my school here in Nigeria, I kept going to the office. And it was like somebody felt I was that free to waste my time. And the next thing I did was to go straight onto the boss's office and lay my complaint, something that took me several weeks to keep coming for. Under 10 minutes, it was given to me. Now, what does that tell you? It tells you that some of the officials at the lower cage, that they are even the problem. Just like you talked about the customer service. At the time, I had to go to the bank to rectify something on my account. I made an inquiry, why would such a deduction be made without my permission? I never asked you for a dollar card and all that. My transaction, I don't need dollar card and all that. They kept me waiting for over 3 hours, and I saw people come in. They'll come in after me, and they'll pass me over. What did I do? I went straight to the manager, and guess what? I got my service delivered to me immediately. So it's a very big problem here. I'm talking still about the customer service desk officials. Yeah. They will not attend to people until you give a tip.
And that is corruption. We'll be coming to that.
Squeeze something into their hands.
And you'll be wondering why people are coming and passing before you while you are sitting there for hours. Because you want to do it correctly, you end up being very penalized. But we will continue doing it correctly because we want others to know that it's supposed to be done in a correct manner. Thank you very much. And when you're in the house is always very heated. I'm happy and glad to be spending this hour with you this evening, talking about the topic, public service delivery, salaries, and corruption. And we have seen how limited and difficult sometimes it is for us to get the services that we are entitled to, sometimes just because somebody thinks that or feels frustrated and doesn't love his or her job and wants to equally to feel the pinch of how he wants his frustration to act on him. And you begin to spend hours on something that is just a click of a machine and everything is validated and it's okay. And now we will want to look at the different ways that we can improve actually on public service delivery in our continent. I think that should be what should interest us and not what actually makes it very difficult. What can be done so that public service delivery can be very comfortable, can be the type that sometimes you even sit and miss that I should have gone to a hospital, even just for checkup or just to get information about the things that happen around you, or get to a bus stop and even ask the prices of the different fares that are going to place. Because with us in Africa, we do not have the electronic boards that will tell you that this is the agency or the car that is going to this area. You have to keep asking. What can be done for our public service delivery, public services to be so hospitable and enjoyed by those of us who are in the continent?
Okay, the first thing from the government angle should be the establishment of effective monitoring and control systems. So we have policies, we have rules, we have regulations guiding the particular functioning of certain offices and all of that. You as a citizen, you know that you should be attended to when you get into the pensions office and not be delayed beyond a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
And as such, there should be strict monitoring and control from the government, but we as citizens have a role in that. I'll tell you something. When I was to get my passport some years ago from the immigration's office, I went online, I filled it out and everything. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, it is a sin for you to go online and try to do that yourself. You must go through someone that is at the office physically who will act as a middleman, who will take some money and all. But I never did that. So because of that, I was delayed for like 2-3 days, and I was told by a top officer right there that I wasn't going to get my passport processed. And so, like I usually do, I don't talk to lower officers. I look for the high oga at the top. So I got to the door or office of that officer. They call him the passport officer or whatever. So I got there, and two of the securities posted that were trying to resist me. They said I couldn't get in there. I don't have any right. And I told them I am not from another country. Even if I were from another country, I have a right. This is a public officer. I have a right to see the public officer. And when they were trying to raise their voices or raise their hands, I don't know what they were trying to do actually, because me, I was just there doing my rant. The officer came out himself and talked to me. And then he said, "Young lady, what is your issue?" And he asked me to come in. I explained to him. The officer himself was trying to intimidate me. Himself and his friend said, "Do you know with what you did right now, you could be put in handcuffs?" And then I told him, I gave him my full credentials. I said, "Sir, number one, I am a human rights activist. Number two, I am well educated, and there is nothing you can do to intimidate me. Number three, I'm a woman who knows her honors." And when I finished speaking with him, he said, "Madam, are you a force woman? You should have been in the force." And I said, "No, sir, it's not that. I'm just an ordinary citizen who knows her right, and I think everybody deserves to be heard." Sir, in the next 2 days, I got my passport processed. So if we can insist on good service delivery as citizens, although it takes some level of boldness, it takes some level of awareness of who you are to be able to do that, because some of us feel, I beg, I can't go through that stress. So that's the first thing, establishment of effective monitoring and control systems. Then number two, enforcement of appropriate sanctions. When people are caught in the act of trying to make others suffer by collecting forcefully from them what they don't want to give out before you offer service to them, they should be made to face sanctions. By that, other people will learn and corruption would reduce in our continent. Then thirdly, they should stop the underpayment of staff. Underpayment of staff in some way, depending on the nature of the person, affects corruption. And if staffs can be paid at least a minimum wage that can take care of rice and oil, I think corruption can be reduced and effective public service can be carried out, because a happy staff will give a happy service. Then we should also look at greater transparency and accountability from the government. We should also look at greater accountability and transparency from the government. By this, we'll be able to give better public service delivery, improved public service delivery. Because we're talking about these vaccines now, there are some places where the vaccines are supposed to be given, and it is being kept reserved for some top officials alone. But if the government or the officials in charge of those vaccines being distributed to the public who are interested to take the vaccines, really check each day, say how many persons are on ground right now that need to take these vaccines, how many vaccines are actually available. We have 50 and we have already 15 persons here. You're saying that you don't have vaccines, but when a governor comes in, you have a shot to give to that person. So accountability will really help a lot in appropriate, proper public service delivery. Thank you.
Adding that accountability as well as transparency in the way of doing rendering services, not being biased, keep away from favoritism, because that is what actually spoils everything that has been done. And you were talking about accountability, salaries, and I just wish to ask, if we talk about salaries now, civil servants or those who earn a salary from the public services that they deliver or that they offer, are they actually satisfied with their salaries? Can we say that African civil servants are duly paid in a way that can make them comfortable?
You know, I really love any topic you give to me because it's very practical. I can always apply them to my life or the environment where I find myself. I will use Nigeria as a case study. Right now, the minimum wage is supposed to be able to cater. Ordinarily, the minimum wage is supposed to be able to cater for food, basic food for the average civil servant. Remember, the minimum wage has not even been implemented by most states. Suffice you to know that that minimum wage cannot buy a bag of rice right now in this country. So the answer to that question is no. Majority of the civil servants, public servants, are not well paid. They are not satisfied with what they are earning. They are not okay with what they're earning. If it's happening in Nigeria, I believe that African countries are actually experiencing much of the same thing. There may be a little bit of differences here and there, but I think they are experiencing about the same kind of thing right now. So from experience here, no, they are not well paid. They are not being paid. Well, they're not happy at the moment because they cannot even provide the basic necessity food for themselves. Thank you.
Somebody just wrote on a platform that deployment of IT can help curb corruption in Africa. But the problem we have in most of these African countries and in big offices is that the IT, or what we call the computerized systems, are there, but they keep doing the work manually. That is what we don't understand. And much money is spent on putting in place these softwares, But like you talked of traditional mechanism of carrying out public service deliveries, the files are still manual files, physical files that are handled from one office to the other. I'll tell you a story. I went to an office. This is a wall separating the two offices. I got information from this office, which is even more than what I expect from the other office. And when I asked that they should give me an update of how my matricule is functioning, the person told
Yeah.
me that they are not able to import my matricule to their office. But I asked him, you just use my matricule to print a document for me. How difficult now is it importing? Or I asked him, what should I do? He told me that no, I should wait outside and come back in a few minutes. And when I came back, the document I was asking was right in front of me. And it is this aspect of computerization. You talked of middlemen who have to fill a passport, you pass through somebody. So we discover, I wish to even ask if this computerized system or this IT system is even working in African countries. Does it actually work? Because we are not seeing any change. Everything still goes on from the normal files carried from one place to the other. You get into an office and you ask for a document, they tell that the document has not reached that office for months. Something that is just supposed to be entered, and then it goes naturally without anybody pushing it or whatever. Do we actually have the computerized system that we have? Are they really working properly, or is it that the people who are supposed to work on it have decided to block these systems so that we continue in the traditional way of handling files in Africa and Ivory?
Okay. With respect to IT, thank you so much, Prof, my honorable and revered, highly revered Prof, my teacher. Yes, IT can actually help, but the IT structure right now in the continent, using Nigeria as a case study, is such that there have been much spent on getting the softwares, like you said, by the government. There has been much spent on getting the computers, the devices, and all that. They have spent so much, but the implementation, the usage is where we have a problem. Because the moment you get these information into the computers, there will no longer be opportunities for people to carry out their corrupt practices, even from the head. But suffice it to know that in some sectors, in some states, like we say it here, for example, in Edo State, the governor, as a transformation agent, has decided that he's going to infuse into the system younger people or people that are more ICT compliant, people that are more technology savvy, that will come into the education sector, that will come into the health sector, and try to make sure that things are computerized. And how is he going about this? He has already started asking them to impute much of those things on files into the computer, because he's really sick and tired of a lot of things, a lot of money is being moved through those dormant files, those old files that when you're looking for it to audit or to do a check on in terms of auditing, you will find it again. But when it is in the computer, you'll be able to, it will not get missing to be there. So the IT systems are not working because some persons have sat down using bureaucratic bottlenecks because they don't want public service delivery to see the light, good public service delivery to see the light of day. Because this is how they keep the people impoverished. This is how they keep the people down. This is how they make sure they keep recycling the leadership around themselves, because by the time they come back and give 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 to people, the people are hungry. They are too hungry to say no. They're hungry enough to say, don't worry, even if it's 1,000, I'm going to take it because my child needs to have food this night.
Thank you, Esther. Talking about corruption actually in Africa, in our continent, when we look at the statistics that are given, most of the times it is always an African country that is emerging one of the corrupt countries in the world. is it a curse, or is there something that we can actually do, or there are some things that we can do so that this we can turn the tables around with this issue that is not corrupt in the world, one of the continents, sorry.
Yes, there are things that we can do to change the narrative. And like I usually say, change begins with me. Change begins with you. It begins with the individual.
Mm-hmm.
Even when we talk about teamwork amounts to result-oriented work when each individual takes responsibility. But when we decide to follow the crowd and say, yes, if you can't beat them, you join them, then it becomes a continuum. There's a continuation of the old norm. We cannot change it. So it starts with me. In the first place, as an individual, what am I doing as a change agent? I say I'm a transformation strategist. I say I am a humanitarian. I say I'm a teacher. In every sector where I proliferate or I find myself, the change should start from there. How? First of all, by teaching our children, our younger generations, that picking the pen of another person is wrong. By telling my child that talking at someone who is your elder is not right. Basic respect, ensuring that everything that we do is based on motive, the right motive for humanity to move forward. Taking away self-centeredness, not allowing greed to drive us,
Mm-hmm.
not celebrating people because of how rich they are, not celebrating the next person because he has 10 cars. It all starts from there. Our value system, a total overhaul, because our success in life rises and falls on two major things. One, mindset. Two, leadership. So until we have the right mindset infused into us, until we begin to change the narrative, to understand that as I am here, Ehi, I can be contented, develop myself, earn a higher salary, or get better opportunities, instead of going to see how we pull down my brother through lying against him, pull down my brother by setting him up, arranging him for him to be kidnapped, pull down my brother by making sure that that contract is supposed to get, I make sure he doesn't get it by lying.
Mm-hmm.
By lying against him, by soiling his name, by making sure that good things don't come to him or her. It starts with us, corruption. In the education sector, making sure that my child goes to school, I check his notes, ensure that his notes are well dated. It may sound old school, or the part I bought for him to make sure, or his computer that he's using is being used for the right thing. Mm-hmm. Ensuring that the school where my child is in attendance, there is no malpractice there. You don't give my child aid during exams, because what we learn as youths, what we learn as teenagers is what guides us through life. Mm-hmm. We need to experience certain hardships. We need to experience certain things in order for us to be able to stand tall and teach others the right thing. If I can't sit down to write my exams, I tell you the truth, when I am helped or aided, I am going to get into positions wrongly, not by merit. And when I get there, I'm going to look for my tribe to bring in there. And guess what? We're going to keep doing things that are not right. So in this continent, everyone taking responsibility to change. I tell you the truth, it's not an easy thing, because when you choose to be different, you are disliked, you are hated, you are despised. But you need to build confidence in yourself. Ask yourself, first of all, will God like this? Is it for the greater good? Is it for humanity's sake? Is it going to help my brother? When we start doing that, you see, instead of collecting 100 million to kill my brother, I'll diss your 100 million and ask you to get into the abyss and let my brother and my sister live. So our value system, if we can check them, go through hardship sometimes, make sure that we follow systems and structures, we will be able to change this continent. A European will not come and intimidate me and tell me, look at you, black monkey, you don't have this, you don't have that. No, we stand well and tell them, well, good and fine, you've got a blue passport, but I tell you the truth, there's nothing you can do that I will not be able to attempt. I may not tell you I'll be able to do it 100%, but I'll be able to attempt it. So
thank you very much. Nobody is going to come and intimidate us here. We're going to do the thing together, and we are on it, and we are going very close. We have some few minutes to go. I have been checking around. There is no hand in the house, no contribution. Thank you, Anaibe, so much for being there. It's been our discussion, and I am always happy when you are around. One last word, surely, for those who are watching, those in your organization, how we can curb or cut away corruption so that our public service deliveries can equally be better, and why not? This can follow with salary increments. Your last word, so that we can close the day. If there are any hands, maybe we take one or two before we call it quit for today.
Okay, one of the ways we can curb corruption is, first of all, to ensure that we vote into power leaders that have conscience. Because like I said, our success in life rests basically on two things: mindset and leadership. So concerning mindset, when we bring in leaders that have this servant heart, that want to serve, not wanting to tell us that monkeys have carried some dollars like it happened in Nigeria, and we could not find them, but are telling us how they have appropriated the funds meant for education into the educational sector. Then we started. Now, how do I come in? How do I come into this? How do I connect with this? First of all, I have to make sure that I am a registered voter. I want to ask us right now, everyone as an African, wherever you are, how many of you are registered? You are of voting age. How many of you have your voters registration card? How many of you actually come out to vote on the day of election? Now, a lot of persons tell me, even if we vote, the people that are in power, they know how to manipulate and all that. And I tell you the truth, as a grassroots politician, in a way, I tell you the truth, it is harder to manipulate figures when people actually come out to vote than when they don't come out. Because when people don't come out to vote, it is easier to falsify figures. But when people come out to vote, your voting power actually speaks. If all of us continue to push and say, I don't want to come out, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, we are actually selling out our future. We are actually selling out our futures and ensuring that people that will not serve us well are actually the ones in power. Secondly, another way to try to curb corruption is to ensure that we get interested in political offices. Somebody says politics is dirty, and all that. If the good men will keep quiet and keep saying politics is dirty, I am a pastor, I am too righteous, I cannot join them in this game, then we keep having the same set of persons recycling. Even at 7,800, they will be there. Interest in governance coming out. You're not going to fight anybody, but gradually from the grassroots, you start connecting with your people, and you start connecting and infusing yourself. You may not come out for elected positions, but you may get appointed positions. Thirdly, just like the public service, accountability.
Round up, we are almost.
Yes. Accountability, transparency. Oh, ye governor, when was the last time you read to your people how you had spent the monies meant for the state in the last 6 months or 1 year? When was the last time you called your people together, you went into the hinterlands, you went to the grassroots, and you began to ask them, what are your needs? Who do you want us to put in positions of power, like the special assistants, like the commissioners and all that? When was the last time you did that? So transparency, accountability these are just a few, there are more. So if we can implement this, if we can get involved, we can try to do our bits, make sure we come out to vote, because these same leaders are the ones that we put in offices, those permanent secretaries, those educators that will conduct the employment. So if we
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anaibi. I think our take-home message today, you say a happy person will equally make a happy or a good job done, and that for us to cut down corruption, we need to establish effective monitoring systems, impute sanctions on those who spoil or take bribe or are corrupted, or even those who corrupt, because it's a two-way issue. And equally, we should stop underpaying staff. Accountability, and you say transparency, is one of the very, very mighty issues that will bring us out of this darkness of corruption. Thank you very much. I want to recognize all those who joined us when we had already begun with the program. Thank you very much for staying faithful with us. This is the debate. This is your platform. Feel free all the time when you're on to keep your questions coming, make them smart, short, and straight to the point. I want to thank you so much for your gift of time that you continue to give us tirelessly, of course, and we are assuring you that we'll continue to be there for you, putting our hands on the plow, like I said already, to make this work go very, very well. Thank you, Anaibi, for your time. You always make the house to really feel warm. Surely everybody understood your point, straight to the point, easy English, low down that anybody can understand. And there were not many questions to explain. Thank you very much. I will be ending here for now, while staying on within the week again for our programs that are coming up. We have the social workers program and racism equally that comes up, and the business program that is on Sundays. We want to thank you very much for always being there. We take leave of you now, and we wish that we come back again on Monday with another interesting topic, and all of you will be on the platform so that we cover this topic together, put our heads together. If there are questions, we ask and answer together so that we clarify our minds and continue to domesticate this Agenda 2063 that we are on. And we are hoping that you invite your friends, relatives, workers, collaborators to join us on this platform so that we will extend our tentacles and equally reach many people. Thank you very much, and good evening from the Sompon Social Service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much, and Ivy. Thank you so much.
Thank you too.